everyone. Welcome to Talkin Cinema with Mike. Today I'll be talking with Chris and his daughter Allie about Martin Scorsese's film Taxi Driver. Chris, Allie, welcome to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Here. Happy to be here and to talk about such a cool movie.
Yes, indeed. So, Chris, why don't you tell me and the viewers what it is that you do?
Yeah, for the last 15 years, I ran a small business. I ran a little a donut shop in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And recently I sold that and have founded a nonprofit theater company called Unlabeled Theater. And we are going to be doing theater opportunities and employment opportunities and independent living skills development for adults with a variety of disabilities. And so that's what I'm up to now.
Was your donut shop in competition with Dunkin' Donuts?
We were sort of, but these days Dunkin', they actually even took the name donuts off of the company, so they don't do very many donuts anymore compared to like coffees and breakfast sandwiches and all that other stuff. So we were a little bit different than that, but I like Dunkin', and I know if you're anywhere close to Boston, it's all Dunkin'.
Well, if your shop was here in Massachusetts, Chris, like you would have a lot of competition on your hands, because you ask like any New Englander, anyone like in Massachusetts or Rhode Island or New Hampshire or Connecticut, they're going to tell you that Dunkin' is the best with the donuts and the coffee.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's a good thing we were here and not there.
Yeah. So, Allie, why don't you tell me what it is that you do?
Yeah, currently I'm a student at Northwestern College in Iowa, and I'm a theater major there.
Have you acted in a couple of plays already?
I have, yes. I was in a children's show called Frank Einstein and the Antimatter Motor, and then I was in Harvey in the spring.
Was it just plays, or did you guys do musicals too? Because they're a little different.
Yeah, Northwestern does like a musical every 2 years, so next year it's going to be Matilda, and I'm very excited. I love musicals.
Oh. Have you like acted in a musical before? Like what other like famous?
I have.
Did you,
I've been acting since I was 12 in middle school.
What are some musicals?
I've been in Hairspray. I've been in Matilda. I was in School of Rock. I think.
Frozen.
Beauty and the Beast.
A bunch.
Little Mermaid. A bunch of musicals.
No, I mean like I've never taken like acting lessons or anything, but like what I used to do, like I started doing this when I was in high school. I would watch like a movie, and then there'd be like a certain scene that I really like, and I try to reenact it myself. Like acting is difficult, it is, but there are some things that I can probably nail at. Maybe I would have to take like a class and learn a few things. But so, what did you guys think of the movie?
I loved it. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I had not seen it in probably more than 25 years, and so seeing it again was it was really cool, and it kind of took me back to, I mean, Scorsese is just such just kind of a genius, and just the way this was shot and the cast that he put together for it, it was really, really cool, and was certainly kind of its time and of its place in New York.
What did you think of Robert De Niro's character and his performance?
You want to start? You want me to start? I thought it was a really powerful performance. He's just, it's just interesting to see somebody. I don't think we see a lot of characters that are kind of as quietly unhinged as he is in this movie, and to the point where you like, I almost about halfway through, I almost started questioning, like, is he even a reliable narrator? Like, we're seeing everything kind of through his perspective, and can we even really trust like what he's telling us and showing us? But I think he did a really great job of sort of that kind of almost like a slow descent into kind of his madness.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, what you
I thought it was a really good performance. He really like got into his character, which I loved. It was almost kind of scary how he and his character became like one person, how they like meshed together. Yeah, it was really cool to see him kind of like,
watching him slowly be detached from reality.
oh yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, Robert De Niro's character, you can't really blame him for like the way he is. I mean, he was a Vietnam War veteran suffering from PTSD, suffering from insomnia, which is, you know, you can't sleep at night. And, you know, when back during that time when men were coming back from war, they had a really tough time finding work and adjusting back to normal society. Especially if they were married and had families, it was even harder for them. But that wasn't the case with Robert De Niro's character.
Well, and that, you know, and even back then, I don't think that we really knew like how dramatic lack of sleep was and how serious it, like how much that impacts you. And whereas today, you know, they've done so many studies on, you know, whether it's astronauts or soldiers or whoever, or people who work in hospitals and who don't sleep enough, and how dramatically that affects your mind and your sense of reality. So the fact that Scorsese sort of captured that with De Niro and was really, really pretty amazing, because all of that stuff is just proven to be so true. Just losing that grip on reality solely just because of lack of sleep, if nothing else.
Yeah. Another thing is, like in his monologues, like when Travis is driving through New York City at night, he's looking around, looking at like the scum in the city. You can tell, like he's like we can understand what he's saying. Like I think in that moment, he's kind of, I mean, like he's insane, like he's mentally unwell, but he is true about like what he's seeing happen in the city, the violence, the robbing, the pimping, all of that is going on in New York. It still happens in New York City today. Like I've been to New York, but not like in those like specific areas. But like I know that like still goes on, especially in big cities. Like I mean, I live in Malden. I'm not too far away from Boston. I'm pretty sure that same stuff goes on there. Like late at night, like during that time.
Well, in that area that he was driving through, and where he was living, and even around Times Square and Manhattan, I mean, today it's so radically different from the 70s and from what it was. And like what the movie shows is, you know, all of the, you know, porno theaters and you know, all of the, you know, the drugs and the sex trade on the streets, and a lot of that has been, at least from those areas, has sort of been
pushed away,
moved elsewhere. But I mean, but back then that, I mean, right in the middle of today's tourist districts, that's what it was like, which was, you know, really amazing to think about that it wasn't all that long ago that it was so different.
Yeah. What did you think? The storyline that always fascinates me with Taxi Driver is the storyline with Travis and his crush on Betsy, played by Sybil Shepherd. That whole dynamic, like I think Betsy was probably like Travis's way of becoming one with reality again. But the thing is, like, he takes her out and then he takes her to the porno theater where he goes like on a daily basis. And it's like, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're just gonna screw everything up at this point. It's gonna be over for you by the time this date is over. And then later, you know, he calls her, and this is the like when Travis is on the phone trying to call Betsy, trying to get in touch with her, the camera pins away from him and just focuses on the hallway near the phone booth. It's like we don't even want to see how bad this is going to happen. We know it's not going to turn out well already.
Yeah, that's.
And then, you know, like he even makes a bigger ass out of himself by going down to where she works at the voting offices, and she has to be like escorted by security. And it was like, okay, Travis, you just gotta stop now.
Well, the thing that I thought was so interesting about that is, and again, this was different times and sort of different, you know, people's behavior was just a little bit different in the 70s than it is today. I mean, generally people act, at least between men and women, a little bit differently than back then. But he really came on strong to her, really strong. And what I thought was so interesting is that she was sort of accommodating of it. Like it was a little bit like, okay, like let's, like, I guess this is okay. Let's kind of see where this goes. And I thought, wow, well, I wonder what's going on in Betsy's life that this guy would come in and just be so kind of over the top with her. And she would kind of be like, oh yeah, like, okay, I guess we could go have a meal. Or yeah, I guess you could take me out to the movies. And then that's what ends up happening, to your point. Wow.
Yeah, a real movie theater, not that slum house.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Like, is this what my taxes are going to? Like, not the government, but to make sure all these porno theaters are staying open.
Yeah, I mean, it was when, and when when you realize that he doesn't realize this is not the right
normal
first date location.
No, it's not.
It's,
yeah, and he has no idea because he's just so detached from reality at this point.
And he's trying to look around and tell her, like, oh,
like this is okay.
Lots of couples come here. Lots of this is normal.
This is fine.
And everybody watching is going, oh no, it's not.
I'm guessing maybe the only necessary time for a couple to go to a porno theater is a way of maybe like trying to get like turned on by each other or something. Some kind of like starter up, some kind of like catalyst to start the reaction of sexual intimacy later in the evening.
Yeah, but not a person to know each other.
No. What did you? Oh, here's a good question. What did you think of Jodie Foster's character? And she was very young when she was in this movie. Very young.
That's ironic.
Like her character and her storyline. What do you guys think of her?
I honestly loved her character. I thought she was super compelling. It was interesting. Yeah, like it made me like wonder why she got into the business when she was so young. Like, was there something going on at home with her? Was there something with her parents? It makes you wonder like why she ran away and wanted to do that instead of staying in school.
What was amazing to me is I marveled at, because again, I hadn't seen the film for a long time. What amazed me is just how natural Jodie Foster was, and how, as an actor, I mean, I just completely bought her 100%. I mean, she was just so good and so natural as Iris that I thought it was a really difficult role for her to play, and it just felt effortless. So I thought she was really, really, really good.
The scene of what Travis is getting delusional about, and I don't know if he was like maybe not like that delusional about it, but like wanting to like clean up the streets in New York. But then he goes to that guy in the apartment building and he purchases all those guns. Like Travis is a former Marine, so he knows like how to use like pretty much any kind of gun he's given. And then like, you know, there's the whole like his whole like, you know, you're talking to me monologue that he's in his apartment, he's like working out and stuff. It's like he wants to like help the city, but he's still like in that delusional state of his, that delusional state of mind of his. Like he thinks he's like this big hero when he's not. And then he gets the mohawk and he tries to assassinate that presidential candidate in that crowd. Like, what do you guys think of that? Like the whole thing with like getting the guns and the mohawk and whatever.
I think that really showed how he was detaching from reality. Like when he was, I mean, if that's your goal and you're going to do that, I mean, I think you kind of try to stay off of the radar as much as possible, or blend in as much as possible, and just try to not be noticed, so that you can kind of, you know, accomplish your mission, do that assassination. And instead, he like makes a point of buddying up to the Secret Service guys and starts acting really weird, and then shows up with the mohawk. And like, if there's something that's gonna stand out, in that political, rally kind of a thing, it's kind of a weird dude with a mohawk.
You're like, look at this. Travis Bickle's channeling the mohawk even before it became cool in the 80s, which was only a decade later.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, he was like maybe one of the,
He started the trend.
yeah, one of the first,
Yeah.
at least here in the States. But yeah, I think that's when you really start to realize he's really, I mean, first of all, just wanting to assassinate the guy in any way, but then to try and go about it the way he did was, I mean, he was sort of, accidentally or intentionally putting up as many roadblocks as he could, by the way he was acting. And that just kind of showed, I think, he was detaching from reality even more.
Yeah, and let's not forget later when he goes to save Jodie Foster from her pimp, played by Harvey Keitel. And there's that whole shootout in the apartment building. It's like Travis had these delusional states of wanting to be like this big hero when really he was just a mentally ill Vietnam veteran who was going around like killing people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had forgotten how, I mean, I had forgotten what a bloodbath that is at the end.
Yeah, I'd never seen that movie before until like last week, and I did not expect it to be that dark. I was like,
it's Martin Scorsese, so you know someone's gonna die or a couple of people are gonna die.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And probably in a pretty bloody way.
Yeah, just look at his movies. I mean, Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed. Everyone dies in those. Well, not everyone, but a majority of people do.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
And usually in a pretty gory way.
Goodwill starts with you every time you shop and donate. Your support opens doors for new opportunities and supplies possibilities for those people with barriers to employment. When you shop at Goodwill, you'll find home decor, clothing that fits your unique style, and other one-of-a-kind treasures. It also keeps items out of the landfill, all while supporting job training, financial coaching, and more. When you shop at and donate to Goodwill, you open doors for possibilities for neighbors in your community. Goodwill starts with you. That's him. And actually, I don't know if you guys heard, Martin Scorsese has a new movie coming out later in October.
I just heard that.
About that.
What do you remember what it's called?
It's called Killers of the Flower Moon. It takes place in the Osage County of like Native American settlements, like in the 1910s and 20s, and it's about how like these guys like looking for oil, and I think the oil was located like on the land that the Native Americans own, and they just like slaughtered them. And basically the FBI gets involved, and like it's basically about like those murders. That's basically what the movie's about, the murders of the people of the Osage County.
Wow.
Wow.
I'll bet that'll be good.
That sounds really good.
Yep, it's Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Jesse Plemons, and Brendan Fraser.
Wow. That's a great cast.
That is a really great cast.
And a bunch of they have a bunch of Native American actors in the movie as well.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
When was the last time we had a movie with like a bunch of Native American actors?
Oh gosh.
I don't know. I don't know if
Not
one.
for a while. I mean,
Not that I know of.
Have you guys ever seen Dances with Wolves?
That's what I was going to say. Probably the last big film would have probably been Dances with Wolves with Kevin
Pretty
Costner.
much the entire cast was Native American actors, except for Kevin Costner and the guys who played the American soldiers.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Then that's many, many years ago now. So that's been out for a while.
It's been like I think like a little more than 30 years since Dances with Wolves came out.
Yeah.
And that actually beat Goodfellas for Best Picture at the Oscars that year.
Wow.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yep. What did you guys think of the ending of the film? Like, what do you think the ending tells us?
The one thing that I thought was, first of all, I thought that the camera shot as it pulls out and overhead, like after everything is sort of ended, and and you think everybody's dead, and it keeps going and pulling out, and then you see like the whole crowd of New Yorkers out on the street gawking, of course, because there's like police cars there. It's New York. And what I thought was interesting is that so many of the people gawking at that death and destruction, so many of those people were probably the people that Travis would have described as scum. Like everybody in that neighborhood who came to kind of watch what happened in the bloodbath, that a lot of those people were probably the same people that Travis would have said, those are people who he would describe as scum. And then the fact that Travis lives.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't die. I thought he was going to die by the end, but
Nope, he lives.
The fact that he survives that is insane, especially because
And he gets his full head of hair back.
Yeah, he does.
And then I thought it was a nice ending that they were somehow able to reunite Iris with her parents and stuff.
But the question is, like, did that really happen, or is that all in Travis's head?
Exactly.
We don't know.
Exactly.
Yes.
What did you guys think? Do you think like he actually got a letter from Iris' parents, or like you think he just that was just in his mind?
That was and actually I really want to rewatch the movie, because through about a third of the way through I started to go, I wonder what of this is real and what of this we're being told that he's making it up. And like, we like, can we trust what he's telling us, or can we trust what we're seeing from him? And that was kind of the last piece of that, where I was like, I'm not sure, but I think if I watched it again, I'd be trying to figure out, are there more clues? What did you think? Did you think that was a figment, or?
I think it was all in Travis's head. Like, I was like, at this point, I don't believe anything that this guy is like saying anymore.
Yeah, I think
like,
you may be right.
I think it's all in his head too.
Like, what happened after the massacre? I mean, like, the cops showed up and Travis was on the floor, covered in blood, and he did the famous thing, put the gun to his head. But it's like, did the cops come and clean up the mess? Did they take Iris home? Did like Travis tell them like he was like saving her? Like, did he even like spend some time in prison maybe before going back to his cab job?
Right.
Yeah, none of us. We don't know.
Because they show like images of what happened, but there's like there's a dialogue with like Travis's. Imagine his parents, Iris's parents writing him the letter thanking him, but and then after that it just goes over to him back as a cab driver.
Yeah.
Like, did Travis, like, is this like a couple months later that Travis spent some time in the big house before assuming his job again?
Right. Yeah. Or did the cops just go, you know what? It's just easier for us to say everybody he killed is a bad guy, and he must have been. They must have all been killed by a good guy, and so that then we don't even have to mess with it or worry about it.
Go to trial or anything.
Yeah.
Like that.
Or like, did Travis actually kill Harvey Keitel and the other like other pimps in the building?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too. Because like Travis shoots Harvey Keitel like right before he enters the building.
Yep.
He's like, suck on this. And then there's all the screaming and the mayhem and the blood's like splattering everywhere. You gotta like hand it like that's what I love about like shootout scenes, like the edits, like the editing that goes into like making a shootout. Like they go like he points his gun, and then Travis, comes out of his sleeve, shoots him, and then it just edits to him getting his head blown off and then going up against the wall. Like that's the other thing too about Taxi Driver, the editing, especially in that scene.
Yeah,
the editing is so good.
And yeah, I love the editing in that scene, but I also loved the rest of the editing, which is more of kind of that time of the 70s, which is just a lot. It's just a lot slower paced. So it's not like today, so many movies are just cut, and it's just like these micro moments where this, like Scorsese, just really lets the whole pace of the city and of the cab and of the relationship kind of develop, and there's these long camera scenes rather than all of these really fast cuts. But then I think it makes the shootout scene even more impressive, because then it is like, all of the dramatic editing of the cutting to get to all of that stuff.
Yeah, think about it. This was the 1970s. There weren't computers back then.
Right.
You know what they had to do? They had the big like roll-up cameras with the little film. What they had to do, like, can you imagine how much of a pain in the ass it was for film editors back in that time? They put all those little pieces together before the movie was released in theaters. I would have hated to be a film editor at the time. I would wait till like the 80s when the computers came out. You just do it like that.
Well, yeah, and you look at that and you realize that was done like with X-Acto knives and tape, and it's just it's incredible.
It's just insane.
It probably would take weeks for them to piece a whole movie together.
Yeah, or even weeks for particular scenes that were really complex. I mean, that's it's amazing to think about.
Incredible, yeah.
What do you guys think Taxi Driver teaches about mental illness and like humanity in general?
Probably that we just need to talk about it more, because probably, I don't know, but in the 70s, because I obviously wasn't alive then, but in the 70s, I'm guessing they probably didn't talk about mental illness or PTSD. They might not have known what it was. If they had known what it was and maybe they had talked about it openly more, maybe Travis wouldn't have like gone in the downward spiral that he did end up going down, because then he would be able to talk about it and like not repress it.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of along those lines that I think it shows that we live our lives and we're surrounded by people, most of whom we don't know and don't necessarily interact with on a daily basis, but these people are all around us, and you really never know what someone is dealing with, what someone is facing, what someone is wrestling with, and unless or until something really dramatic happens, and like with Travis, that they either get so exhausted or so worn out or so fed up that something just pushes them over the edge, and you just don't know what that's going to be, but that those folks are around in the fabric of our society, but we rarely realize it or see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, we'll talk about mental illness. Like, Chris, like, were you like a kid in the 70s? Like, what time did you like grow up in? Like, with
I grew up in the I mean, really remembering kind of the mid 70s and the early 80s. So that was when I was young, and yeah, it was radically. I mean, as far as mental health at all, I never heard that term until not all that many years ago. So it was just not a thing. And
mental health wasn't a thing like talked about a lot when you were growing up back in the day.
Not at all. Almost never. Almost
Like,
never.
were there even like like guidance counselors at the schools you went to, like at the high school you went to when you were growing up?
There were guidance counselors, but I don't think that they really helped people with mental health issues. I think it was more like, oh, you're having trouble in school. Well, let's help you figure out how to do better in school. Not
Oh
what
yeah.
not what's going on in your house. Not are you okay? It was kind of like, well, how can we help you get better grades?
Oh
And even growing up and knowing, like, Vietnam veterans who had come home not that long ago, and there was really nothing for them. I mean, there was just really not a lot of support or anything outside of, they were just sort of expected to pick life back up with their families, and just, like you said, just kind of become part of society again. And
yeah,
that
but now it's like in the high school I went to, Malden High School, like we have guidance counselors, but we also have adjustment counselors. Now those are the people that we have to talk about like our problems with.
Hmm.
And it seems like from what you're saying, Chris, is that there weren't like those kind of people in like your schools like growing up back in the day. Like
No, not at all.
so like bullying and mental health and problems at home weren't talked about like amongst in schools. Not even like as like class meetings or like assemblies. Because
Not
now it's happening everywhere.
right. And I would say not where I went. I mean, if it was I mean, like you brought up a bullying thing. I mean, that was basically, if anybody even bothered to let like parents know, which they usually didn't, it was kind of like, just sort it out on your own. Figure it out, or learn how to live with it.
Oh, so like, what if there was someone like growing up back in your time that had like an abusive family, like child protective services didn't exist at the time?
They existed, but it would have to be, I mean, honestly, it would have to have gotten to a point that was so awful, that where it was so obvious that they almost had to be called in. But beyond that, I mean, it was a very different time. It just really wasn't a thing. It had to be pretty substantial, like somebody showing up at school with a broken arm that they couldn't explain.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
like
it had.
I think it got a little better like in the 80s and 90s because people were becoming a little bit more aware of like the problems that kids go through and like what young adults go through. That's why like like what's his name? The guy who did like the what was his name? Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot his name. Who did the Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off? John Hughes. John Hughes.
Yeah.
Like his films, like let's take the Breakfast Club for an instance. That movie showed us like what teens were going through at the time with like family and friends and peer pressure and stuff like that. Like his films were giving people at that time a more like inside look of what like what your children are going through like once they get older. And also there was like I read that there was like a bunch of like more like after school specials with like kids going through stuff like with not just with family but with like drugs and like bullying and you know stuff like that. Like with all that coming out, like parents, like especially parents were being more aware of what like the child needs and like they were being more concerned about like mental health awareness and whatnot. And like I feel like if that maybe like existed back in like maybe the 70s, 60s, maybe even 50s, maybe some people like Travis wouldn't have ended up the way they did. But
Yeah,
now,
that's a good point.
That is
Yeah.
a very good point.
Yep. I think maybe, yeah, some of that stuff could have been stopped or at least altered to not be so serious.
like I remember growing up like in the early like 2000s, I remember like there would be like, you know, cartoons I would watch and they still like happen now in like cartoons for kids these days. They actually are addressing like these serious issues with for like these younger like this younger generation to understand. which I think is great. And what it's not just like bullying and family, like they're talking about like religion and like appreciating your ethnicity. And even like what's really cool is that there are a lot of more cartoons now, like on Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, they're talking about stuff with the LGBTQ community and having like characters that are gay and lesbian and transgender and non-binary. Like they're putting that in the conversation now. And I think that's really important for like the kids these days. I mean, I didn't like grow up with watching shows with those kind of characters, but I'm glad now that they're addressing it and putting it in the conversation because they should.
Definitely.
That's a big change from not that many years ago.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The Ukraine has been under severe devastation for quite some time. People are losing their homes and going hungry, and we need to help put a stop to it. Log on to donate.amnestyusa.org and donate now in order to help those people get through this difficult time. Thank you. Thing I wanted to ask was I probably should have asked it earlier. What do you guys think of Martin Scorsese's cameo in the film as Travis's passenger?
So do you know which cameo that was?
I don't know which one it was.
He was the passenger in the cab who he tells to just stop outside the window and look up at his wife.
Yeah, okay.
So that was Martin Scorsese.
Oh, that's fun.
So what did you think about that cameo?
I thought it was a fun way to like insert him into his own movie that he made. I thought it was cool.
And look at him; he's so young. He has the long hair and a mustache, and look at him now. He has white hair, and wearing glasses. Totally different. So like, and his character, he was kind of a psychopath because he was telling Travis that he's going to go up to his apartment and kill his wife and her lover. Just like a sick man. Like, what do you do? Like when you're driving a cab, it's like, even like for Uber and Lyft drivers these days, you never know who your passenger is going to be. Mm. If you're like in Travis's situation with Martin Scorsese's cameo, I don't know what you're going to do.
Well, I was surprised at how long that scene went on.
I was too. I thought it would stop at some point, but it just kept going.
And he just kept talking and talking and talking, and I almost wonder if that helped reinforce for Travis all of the the scum that he keeps talking about. If that passenger just reinforced for him, yep, look, here's this perfect example. This guy's going to go up and kill his wife, and this city is overrun with the scum. And so I think maybe that was kind of the point of that
push for him to go over the edge.
Yeah, and kind of the point of that cameo to show Travis that's everybody out there almost everybody is scum. That's what started.
That probably started the whole thing with Travis wanting to clean up the city. Now that I think about it, when I'm hearing what you guys are saying, yeah. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, pushed him that way.
Pushed him in that direction, unfortunately.
Because with some people that are mentally ill, like you never know, like the tiniest little thing can really set them off and go on a whirlwind, go on a bender.
Right. And for every person, that's a different little morsel, and you don't know what it is or how big or how little that might be.
Yeah, think about it. You're having this horrible day. All this crazy stuff happens, and then you come home. You go somewhere. Everything's going to be fine, and then one little mistake happens, and that just like triggers something in your brain, and you just snap. Mm-hmm. Like it's amazing. Like just like how much like of an impact a small little change or a situation could make someone go like totally berserk. It's happened to me a few times. I mean, like being on the autism spectrum, like I have a few like little quirks that could maybe set me off. I mean, I'm better at it now, but when I was like a kid, it was a little bit harder because I wasn't as self-aware of my emotions, and now I am. Like really, I could like pop off at like the tiniest little things. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It would be like watching the Tasmanian devil like spin around in his like little tornado. That's what it was kind of like.
It's a great analogy. Everybody knows
That's
that.
great.
That's awesome.
So, guys, the cinematography really stood out for me in the film about like how it's shot and like how it shows like Travis's way of thinking. Would you guys want to like watch the film again to see it from that perspective?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. And like we talked before when we were talking about even just that really cool tracking shot at the end where it's
Where it
going
just slowly went
over everything and so kind of looking specifically at cinematography I think would be amazing.
Yes, let's do that.